So Lance, let's move on to the next subject here, and
All
let's
right.
try to keep it briefer than longer. I will just
All
say that.
right. I could probably talk about this one for hours, but I won't. Alexander the Third, also known as Alexander the Great, probably everybody's heard of him, was born in was born July 20th, 356 BC. He became king at the bright age of 20, where then he immediately took the entire Macedonian army, launched a 13-year conquest through the coastline along the Asia Minor, up into Afghanistan and into India. Up until that point, the Greeks did not know what was in India. They really hadn't been there. So what he did was he rode his armies up across the border of the Asia Minor, took all of the port cities, and then rode up into Afghanistan and defeated King Darius III's army at Galgamea. Sorry, I had to think of the name of that for a second. Now, in Galgamea, he defeated the Persian king, King Darius III. He defeated his entire army, sent him out running into the mountains. That gave him control of Babylon, one of the oldest cities in the world. Think it might still stand today. Now, what I want to kind of point out here is through this journey through Asia Minor, up Afghanistan, modern day Iraq, all of that territory, he founded over 20 cities and named them all Alexandria. We don't know exactly how many of them because they don't all still stand today. But and give me a split second and I'll find the exact year.
It's been 8 split seconds.
It has not been 8 split seconds.
It sure has. Just depends how thinly you split them.
In 332 BC, he founded the one in Egypt, which is the biggest one that still stands today. It's got over 5 million people in it to this day. Now, there was a library there, and Jason mentioned it briefly earlier in the podcast about the Great Fire in Alexandria. It is believed that a good portion of ancient history was actually lost forever because of that Great Fire, which happened in 48 BC. Now, that was actually caused because Julius Caesar, the then Emperor of Rome, dropped a candle in that library and it went up into flame. So we can all blame Julius Caesar for that one.
Fuck that guy.
Yeah, fuck Julius Caesar.
I mean,
Him and Cleopatra.
I'll tell you what, dude. If I ever find Julius Caesar, I'm gonna fucking stab him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like 12 people beat me to it.
Well, you
But
could always go to hell and turn on the Doom music and ask Satan where he's at.
Be gone,
yeah,
Satan.
Alexandria is still in Egypt, and it has like 5 million people in it. It's one of the largest cities in the entire country of Egypt nowadays.
Good for them.
Now, one of the biggest, things that he did is he gave a speech. It's not really clear what year the speech was given, but after about 13 years of marching through all of these, they fought 52 battles in total to conquer everything. They conquered Persia. They united all the barbarian tribes from Macedon to India. They conquered everything. He gave a speech called the Opus Mutinus. His entire Greek army said that we're done. We're tired of fighting. We're going home. We don't want to do this no more. So he stood in front of his entire army and pretty much told them, I don't give a shit where you go. Go home. But I want you to know that you left your king here in Greece with the foreigners you conquered. I want you to go home and tell your wives that you left your king in India with the people you conquered. and I will take my Asians, and I will continue to conquer. Is pretty much what he told them. He said, I eat what you eat, I sleep where you sleep. You know, I do the same thing you guys do. He pretty much treated him, he didn't think of himself as better than his men. He did the same thing. That's why I believe Alexander the Great made such a great leader in total, is because he led by example. He wasn't just some king ruling over his army. He was at the front of every battle line. During the speech, I believe he even said, show me your scars, I will strip naked and show you mine.
There you go.
You know, like, he was, and apparently there, according to legend, there was a big emotional, you know, kind of recoiling between him and his army. Like, you know, they got real emotional, and everybody just kind of took a step back and was like, oh, you know, he's right. You know, he made us rich. He gave us just about everything we had. Took us from sheep farmers to now we rule half the world.
Okay.
Let's give this a look real quick. We've got some supporting video here to kind of like say what you know, what was his life, and kind of in general what was his legend. So let's give this a look real
Crash
quick.
Course. Love Crash Course.
So, quick biography of Alexander of Macedon. Born in 356 BCE, died in 323 BCE at the ripe old age of 32. Alexander was the son of King Philip II, and when just 13 years old, he tamed a horse no one else could ride named Bucephalus, which impressed his father so much that he said, "O thy son, look thee out at a kingdom equal to and worthy of thyself, for Macedonia is too little for thee." By that time, he was already an accomplished general, but over the next decade, he expanded his empire with unprecedented speed, and he is famous for having never lost a battle. Today, we're going to look at...
By the way, this presentation is by Crash Course on YouTube. Be sure to give them a like and a subscribe. They do an excellent job. I've seen a few of their other videos.
Alexander of Macedon's story by examining 3 possible definitions of greatness. First, maybe Alexander was great because of his accomplishments. This is an extension of the idea that history is the record of the deeds of great men. Now, of course, that's ridiculous. For one thing, half of people are women. For another, and this is important, there are lots of historical events that no one can take responsibility for, like, for instance, the Black Plague. Still, Alexander was accomplished. I mean, he conquered a lot of territory, like, a lot. His father Philip had conquered all of Greece, but Alexander did what the Spartans and the Athenians had failed to do. He destroyed the Persian Empire. He conquered all the land the Persians had held, including Egypt, and then marched toward India, stopping at the Indus River only because his army was like, hey, Alexander, you know what would be awesome? Not marching. Also, Alexander...
Exactly. That's actually...
Not marching.
That's a good point.
Alexander was a really good general.
Yeah, I mean, they
I'm gonna pay you to sit on your ass.
Although historians disagree over whether his tactics were truly brilliant or if his army just happened to have better technology, specifically these extra long spears called sarissas. But much of his reputation as a general and his reputation in general, anybody? Puns? Maybe I should stop? Okay. Is because of Napoleon. Napoleon, like many other generals through the millennia, was obsessed with Alexander the Great, but more on that in a moment. That said, Alexander wasn't very good at what we might now call empire.
He was? I thought he was short.
Yep. Nope, he was average height for a man in France at his time period. He was depicted in many ways that made him look larger than other people, and that kind of took on a life of its own, i.e. a meme of its own, where people thought he was, but what am I thinking of here? Like, you know, when a dude with a tiny dick drives a huge truck.
Egotistic.
Overcompensating.
Overcompensation. Yeah.
Empire building. Alexander's empire is definitely visually impressive, but it wasn't actually much of an empire. Like, Alexander specialized in the tearing down of things, but he wasn't so great at the building up of institutions to replace the things he'd torn down. And that's why pretty soon after his death, his empire broke into 3 empires called the Hellenistic kingdoms. Each was ruled by one of Alexander's generals, and they became important dynasties. The Antigonids in Greece and Macedonia, the Ptolemies in Egypt, the Seleucids in Persia, all of which lasted longer than Alexander's empire itself. A second kind of greatness, maybe Alexander was great because he had an enormous impact on the world after his...
I thought he was going to say penis, but...
death. Like King Tut, Alexander the Great was amazingly good at being a dead person. Let's go to the thought bubble. So after Alexander of Macedon died, everyone, from the Romans to Napoleon to Oliver Stone, loved him, and he was an important military model for many generals throughout history, but his main post-death legacy may be that he introduced the Persian idea of absolute monarchy to the Greco-Roman world, which would become a pretty big deal. Alexander also built a number of cities on his route that became big deals after his death, and it's easy to spot them because he named most of them after himself, and one after his horse. The Alexandrian Egypt became a major center of learning in the classical world and was home to the most amazing library ever, which Julius Caesar probably accidentally burned down while trying to conquer a bunch of land to emulate his hero, Alexander the Great. Plus, the dead Alexander had a huge impact on culture. He gave the region its common language, Greek, which facilitated conversations and commerce. Greek was so widespread that archaeologists have found coins in what is now Afghanistan with pictures of their kings with the word king written beneath the pictures in Greek. This is also why, incidentally, the New Testament was eventually written in Greek. Although Alexander was mostly just conquering territory for the glory and heroism and greatness of it all, in his wake emerged a more closely connected world that could trade and communicate with more people more efficiently than ever before. Alexander didn't make those things happen, but they probably wouldn't have happened without him. But here's a question. If you're watching Jersey Shore and get so involved in the situation's romantic conquest that you leave the bathwater running, thereby flooding your apartment, and you have to call a plumber, and the plumber comes over and you fall in love with him and get married and live happily ever after, does that make the situation responsible for your marriage? Thanks, Thought Bubble. Okay, a third definition of greatness. Maybe Alexander is great because of his legend. Since no accounts of Alexander were written while he was alive, embellishment was easy.
Yeah, I've seen that.
This machine kills fascists.
I noticed that at the beginning of the video, dude.
I didn't notice.
And maybe
that
that's where
until
true
now.
greatness lies. I mean, the guy died at 32 before he ever had a chance to get old and lose battles. He was tutored by Aristotle, for God's sakes. Then there's Alexander's single-minded, obsessive, Ahab-esque pursuit of the Persian king Darius, who he chased across modern-day Iraq and Iran for no real reason except that he desperately wanted to kill him. And when Bessus, one of Darius's generals, assassinated him before Alexander had the chance, Alexander chased Bessus around until he could at least kill him. These almost comical pursuits of glory and heroism are accompanied in classical histories by stories of Alexander walking through the desert and it's suddenly raining and these ravens coming to lead him to the army he's supposed to fight, and stories of his hot Persian wife Roxana, who while still a teenager engineered the assassination of many of Alexander's fellow wives. And even in his death, people tried to make Alexander live up to this heroic ideal. Like Plutarch tells us that he died of a fever, but that's no way for a masculine, empire-building, awesome person to die. So rumors persist that he died either of alcohol poisoning or else of assassination-y poisoning. I mean, no great man can die of a fever. Speaking of great men, it's time to strip down for the open letter.
All right, so that is it for that video.
2 points I want to make. First, that bit about how it suddenly rained in the desert and that crows followed his army or led them to battle. The first one, not likely. Possible coincidence. It does rain in the desert occasionally. But the crows leading his army to battle is not so far-fetched. It's actually believed by some ornithologists that birds, like carrion birds and birds of prey, will see an army and realize, oh, there's going to be a battle, and that means fresh corpses. So they will fly with that army to meet the other army.
I have heard that
it makes sense. Yeah, it's like ringing the dinner bell.
Kinda, yeah. Except this dinner bell sounds like millions of marching feet in Clash of Sword on Shield. Which, that sound just sounds wonderful. Second point I wanted to make.
It's the sound of metal.
It is indeed. But the second point I wanted to make, Alexander the Great is just held on such a high pedestal for conquering, for taking the land that he truly believed belonged to him and making it something completely new. What is Christopher Columbus hated for?
The same thing.
Precisely.
No, Alexander the Great. I'm sorry about my camera. I don't know out of the thing right now. I don't know if I need to be added. But Alexander the Great didn't take the land because he believed it was his. His ultimate goal was to unify and bring civilization. Like, really, what he conquered were all these barbaric tribes, the Tibilians, the Thracians. All of these people didn't have the aspect of society. He believed he was doing them a huge favor by bringing them. It was the spread of the Hellenistic culture throughout the Eastern world.
Firstly,
Oh, and
Christopher
not
Columbus had
only
the same idea for the Native Americans. Secondly, they knew nothing about India, which you said yourself.
Yeah.
India could have been a paradise of technology, and they knew nothing about it, but they marched to conquer it anyway.
Well, the story is like he wanted, his father wanted to go to India and never made it because he died.
Fair point.
And he went to India because his father never could, and he didn't like his father much. He thought of his father as a drunk, as a pretty much a blubbering old man, and he wanted to be better than his father, like I guess every son did. King Philip II, who only conquered Greece. He wanted to surpass his father in not only name but image.
Well, and not only that, but Christopher Columbus also didn't do this for the sake of discovery. Didn't do it, just for the sake of his own will or for his own glory. It was a prison sentence by I can't remember which queen that he served under at the time, and not to mention he even lied to the queen saying that he discovered India because that's where the Indian and Native American confusion comes from. Native Americans are not Indians; they're Native Americans. Indians come from India, and that's the reason why that there's so much confusion, and not to mention a lot of controversy behind Columbus Day because he was looked at as a hero when actually he was a lying coward because he didn't want to lose his head.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Yay,
Right.
Lance is back.
Okay. Yeah, I left video and I came back in, and there we go.